Welcome to galacticconnection.com, one of the most popular blogs on the World Wide Web today for alternative news. Stay tuned for the latest information on our world shift from enslavement to galactic involvement, as well as current intel on any blockages impeding us from our sovereign birthright. Knowledge and self-mastery are key at this time. Our commitment is to present you with the latest breaking conspiratorial articles, off-world messages, exopolitics, cutting-edge technologies and sciences, and also an ever-significant intertwining of spiritual support and metaphysical scope that one needs to dive down the rabbit hole in search for truth with balance. We are truly on the horizon of a new golden age filled with the promise for more love, worldwide peace, and accelerated intuitive skills, where every living being can exist in cohesion and abundance. It is whatever we envision and dream this new world to be. I say to you now, let's redefine the new world to the beginnings of our own precious heaven on earth. Galactic Connection is here to provide the pulse of Mother Earth through an eclectic range of interviews each Tuesday afternoon from 3 to 4:55 p.m. Pacific Standard Time, Station 2 on BVS Radio, expanding your perspectives on how we can once and for all take back our freedoms, our joy, and our connection with our mighty I Am presence. Our intention remains true to connect hearts and minds everywhere in order to obtain global unity and galactic and universal acceptance. Our discussions will continue to cover anything to do with galactic society and our involvement with our galactic brothers and sisters. Our guests are experts in their fields, and our radio shows have been coined as some of the most thought-provoking out there. In addition to our daily blog, which runs 365 days a year, we also offer a realm of healing services such as our world-renowned implant removal processes, our spiritual past life clearings, our galactic violet ray alchemy from Alexandra, who shares in the lineage of Merlin, and other cutting-edge healing technologies. Check our site out at galacticconnection.com now, sending you a wave of light, love, and inspiration, and a personal hug and thank you for listening to our Galactic Connection radio show and visiting our blog today. Good morning, everyone. This is Alexandra Butters of galacticconnection.com, and I have a pre-recorded interview today with a gentleman named Tim Freke. Before I read off his bio, I just wanted to give everybody the good news that there has been an immense amount of clearing done on all levels, not only below the surface, not only within sacred areas, not only above. We've got the 2.5 million ships on standby. We are being cleansed and purified like there's no tomorrow. Remember that about 95% of the work is being gracefully done for us to clear all the miscreations of this planet and beyond, and all the other sectors. So remember that only 5% of what your work is on the line. Do not forget to say every day, I give thanks and I receive. I accept and receive all the healing work that has been done for me, all aspects of my being, and my lineage. Thank you, it is done. Don't forget to say that, even if you're compelled to say it a couple times a day, because that's how much work is being done by divinity to bring us home. You don't want to miss out. That's the key. And you're not invoking, you're not pulling in any spirits or anything like that. You're really stepping into your power by doing this and really clarifying where you are. You're going to feel shifts and changes, and some people have had them just instantaneously, and others it's much more subtle. So please don't forget to do that. So now I want to give you a little bit of a background story on this. Tim Freke was a gentleman I was referred to by Santos Bonacci, and he was very influenced by his writings and his work because he had done some amazing books on the Jesus mysteries back in 1999. So this guy is really cool. I think you're going to really resonate with his message. He is coined as a deep life explorer, best-selling author of more than 30 books, spiritual pioneer, stand-up philosopher, Gnostic scholar, and a friend, not guru. He really stresses that. His life has been an adventure of awakening, immersed in the world's spiritual traditions, such as meditative retreat, academic philosophy, experimentation with psychedelic drugs, and shamanic power plants. Tim freely expresses his immense respect for our spiritual heritage, but has been articulating a new philosophy of awakening, which avoids some of the dead ends he has become aware of on his own journey. Tim decided to reinvigorate the ancient tradition by becoming a stand-up philosopher, traveling from place to place in order to challenge people's so-called common sense assumptions and open their minds to the new ways of seeing the world. Popularized from the release of the Jesus Mysteries in 1999, Tim was instantaneously launched as an international bestseller, sharing his colossal amount of work in the studies of ancient paganism and Christian Gnosticism with co-author Peter Gandy. Quoted as saying, quote, "I don't want disciples, I want friends who are co-explorers," unquote. Tim describes himself as a passionate explorer of the deep mystery of life, reporting back from his expeditions into uncharted regions of consciousness and offering route maps to fellow explorers who fancy making the trip themselves. Sounds pretty intriguing. I think you're going to really enjoy him. And we will be reviewing today this book in particular because he has so many, and it's called Deep Awakening. Sorry, there's a lot of sun coming into my Deep Awakening. Okay, wake up to oneness and celebrate your individuality, which is just so in alignment with my messages that I share with the audience. So again, we're getting really close to the spring equinox. This is an amazing time for us to be alive and share in all of the mysteries that are about to unfold and that are already unfolding. Remember, we are getting upgraded not only weekly, but on top of that daily. I'm noticing it even with my own animals. They're having a little bit of a rough go of it. Be gentle to yourself. And also, a lot of us are needing more sleep. So allow that to happen if you need to. You may need to take naps like you normally haven't had to do. Just be aware that the physical body is really trying to catch up. It's really, really working overtime to catch up with the spiritual awareness and the explosion within our consciousness that we are all living out right now as we speak. This is truly our dream come true, and we are in the middle of co-creating it right now. So stay tuned. I think you're really going to enjoy hearing this man. He's very deep. So good morning, everyone. Again, we have this pre-recorded interview with none other than Tim Freke, a best-selling author. And I've already told you all kinds of cool things about this gentleman who resides in the United Kingdom. Awesome accent, I might add. And for all of you that are not familiar with his work, he has over 30 books. Just to give you an idea of some of the titles, we have Soul Story, Deep Awake, Lucid Living, The Mystery Experience, How Long Is Now, The Jesus Mysteries, Jesus and the Last Goddess. Ooh, that sounds cool. The Laughing Jesus, The Gospel, The Second Coming. I mean, just definitely check out his website while you're listening. It's at timfreke.com, and it's Freke. Okay, so timfreke.com. So good morning. I know it's good evening to you. Right?
Yes, the mystery of time, isn't it? Yes. Hello.
Hello. Hello. I love that. So I thought I read through your whole book. I've already kind of introduced everybody to this Deep Awake book, which is just
wonderful.
And I was so on the same page with this. I resonate with everything in here, literally. And was really happy to see that, because I was sitting around with some healers the other day, and we were saying how there's so much BS in the spiritual community that is literally causing us all to almost be in a interminable guilt mode. And you kind of hit on that in your book.
Yeah.
So you started out with, what is life? I don't know. I just love that. Who am I? Do you know? and becoming intensely aware that you exist and how amazing it is. So can you first start with, I guess you've been doing so many series of books. What inspired you to go here with, what is deep awake meaning to you?
Well, my books have been through various phases as I've kind of grown as a human being and been on my journey, my spiritual journey, because that's what my life is about, what my books are about. But the last phase, probably for the last 10 or 15 years, has been, the first phase was very much writing books about spiritual traditions. Zen Buddhism, Sufism, shamanism,
wow,
everything. And going through all of these different traditions, and I've probably written books on all of them, I should think, and going, look, at their heart, there's a common message here. The language is different. The concepts are different. Literally, the language is different because they're written in different places and different times in history. But underneath, once you peel away the differences, and the differences are wonderful, actually, they're great. That's what gives it color. But underneath, what I see is human beings who've had a common or comparable experience. And it's an experience which I've been exploring since I was very young, which gets called awakening, where you come into this deep state of seeing the depths of life and appreciating that you're in a very profound, mysterious experience. And there's, we can talk more about what that state is perhaps later, but there's numbers of things which characterize it. A state of oneness is something. Love is another big thing. That there's this connection with love, that the whole universe is pulsating with love. And the other thing which really strikes me as common and is a state of deep knowing. In the West it was called gnosis. In the East it's called gnana. You come into a state of knowing something before words. And if I had to push myself to say what it is, it would probably be to say something as simple as, for me, it's knowing that everything's okay, despite everything, despite all of the horrors and the suffering and the chaos. Underneath, the thing we're in is benign, and that there's a faith, a confidence, a confidere with faith. There's a faith, not in an idea or a belief, but a faith in life itself, that there's a goodness here. And what I found was that these common threads appeared again and again in all of these different traditions. So a large part of my life was exploring all of those things and thinking, oh, this is interesting. What we have here is a human experience, something which is common to all of us. And then the last phase of my life, the last 15, 20 years probably, has been about trying to see, okay, so what marked out all these people that I found interesting, whether it's Jalaluddin Rumi, the Muslim, or it's Bodhidharma, the Buddhist. What marked them out for me and made them attract me was that they took what they found and reinvented it for their own time. So it ceased to be a dead doctrine and it became a living experience. So that's what I've tried to do. So the goal I've set myself was, okay, well, I've got to do my best to contribute something which can help us do that today. And my work has been like, okay, how can I say this in such a way that it has real authenticity, that it's not me pretending to be something I'm not, and it can reach people. And then like your response is beautiful. I love that response where people go, look, you're saying what I'm experiencing, or you're saying what I'm thinking. Because I feel like that's my job. That's what I can give to people. That's what I do. I think clearly and I can give it to them and go, try this. Does this fit with your experience?
I really aligned with you because, you're talking about human-centered spirituality, and a lot of the traditions and the ways in which we've been doing things, whether it's meditation, if you want to call it prayer, ceremonies, what have you, all of the old ritualisms people are finding that they're not necessary anymore. They're finding that simplicity is what's coming and weaving within not only ourselves, but within life, as we call it. And, I just kind of wanted you to talk about this. I love it when you said human-centered and radically world-embracing is a more enlivened way because the world becomes a wonderland. Can you talk a little more about that? Create a wonderland.
There's two things. I think you've said two really important things there. One is that in a paradoxical way, certainly my experience is that the deeper I go, the simpler I get,
Yes.
not the more complex. So that when I started out on the journey, I quite liked all those funny robes and weird words and funny names, and felt it probably meant there was something real there.
Right.
Now, I'm not interested in any of that. That's just dressing up. You know, I don't mind dressing up, but it's nothing to do with this. And so now it becomes my favorite thoughts, and I see it in people like my audiences, that the favorite thoughts I can give them is when I take something and it's so like, oh my God, that's so clear and simple that you get it.
Yeah.
And then something which you're struggling to, what is that? You suddenly go, oh, I've actually got it. And not just the idea, but the experience to which the idea points.
Yes.
And I take a profoundly evolutionary approach to everything. Now, this is something which has been coming in for me over the last 10 or 15 years again, and particularly through the study of the books I did on Gnosticism and Christian Gnosticism and paganism, this kind of evolution. So for me, a lot of traditional spirituality was human beings' attempt to understand it then. And the mistake we make is we think somehow that because it's ancient, it's true. And it's like,
so true.
Plato, who's one of my favorite philosophers, thought the brain was a cooling system for the blood. I certainly don't want him doing brain surgery on me.
Wow.
The fact that it's old doesn't make it right. And my feeling is that we're constantly moving on, and we need to evolve. So there's two ways of two philosophies, I think, in spirituality we can adopt fundamentally. One which goes, it was all great, and then there was a mess up. And most spirituality is ancient and follows that road. Oh, the reason it's all so horrible and we're so much suffering is because something awful has gone wrong and we need to put it right. We're lost in illusion. We've fallen as a punishment. The soul has messed up. And what you have to do is get rid of the world and get back home. Mm-hmm. So the world is an awful mistake. Your personality traps you. That's an awful mistake. Your mind, your ability to think, that's an awful mistake. My belief is the opposite. It feels like the reason that things are like they are is because we're evolving towards greater goodness. And that means we need to keep moving forward from something more primitive. So we're moving out of nature into this transcendent realm, and our role is to keep following the good, not because we've fallen, but because we're evolving. And then you see that we don't have to reject the world. In fact, we have to transform it. And that is what we're doing. I mean, there's a long way to go, but we are transforming. The fact that you and I can sit here well-fed, in a lovely environment, warm, safe, relatively, comfortable, is something that most human beings throughout history would have dreamed of. The fact that we can communicate in two different continents, I can see you, this can go out and touch people all over the world. These are incredible evolutionary developments that's happened through not rejecting the world, but by finding the best in ourselves and bringing it into the world. And that is what I mean by, and then it is a wonderland, isn't it? It's beautiful. The world is a beautiful place when we really see it.
Well, and you've talked about this as well as many others. It's all in what you decide to focus on. You can have a set of twins, and they're brought up in completely different environments. One's focusing on all the poverty and the war and the bloodshed, and the other one's completely focusing on connection and love and joy and nature. And they have completely different lives, even though they have the same genetics. What we focus on.
A very central idea in the book is this idea of paralogical thinking.
Yes, I was going to bring that up.
And I think what you're pointing at there is paralogical thinking becomes relevant. I'm aware that that such a term can sound a bit scary, but it's really not. What the essence of paralogical thinking is just to see that opposites can both be true. And a lot of our thinking, we think either one or the other must be true. But sometimes they're both true from different perspectives. And a very simple example I put in the book, which happens to be true today actually, is I say that if I said, this morning I saw the sunrise, that would happen to be true. I did see the sunrise this morning. If I also said, the sun doesn't rise. We're a sphere hurtling around the sun. The sun doesn't do anything. That would also be true. Yeah. So I did and I didn't watch the sunrise, and they're not contradictory. They're just the same truth from two different perspectives. And if you can see that, and you can see they're both true, you have a deeper understanding than if you think one or the other is true. And you've only got to look at history and the whole, Galileo and the church, how when they thought, well, it's this one, no, it's this one. And then it's like, well, it's both.
Yeah.
And that's where it feels like when you said earlier about when we look at the twins, the reason I wanted to bring this up was it feels like, look, the world is full of suffering and awful things are happening right now to little children and awful things. Awful things are happening. And we don't want to turn away from that. But also, we don't have to choose one or the other, because there's always something good going on too.
Right.
This moment, just being is good.
Yeah.
So that right in the middle of all the yuck, there's something beautiful. And then we can choose, like you said, to focus on that, not by denying the rest, not like, oh no, it's, but actually by going, look, I know it's there, but I'm focusing on this and I'm bringing in the love into the suffering rather than ignoring it or letting it overwhelm me.
One of the main threads throughout your entire book was almost an allowance and a permission for those that are on their spiritual path to not beat themselves up because they actually do feel certain things. I've had this conversation with many people many times. It's okay for you to do and not just be 24/7. It's okay for you to possibly do things that the spiritual traditional perspective is saying, no, because that's a bad human being that does that kind of thing. And I really want you to get into that, because more than anything else, I see this now where apparently we've never experienced this accelerated growth ever. We're going through tremendous change, both internally and externally. And it's really an important message. That's why I really resonate with this book, because I feel I get emails from all over the world, people just unhappy with themselves. They feel like they're always falling short because they're angry. Anger's coming up, or they have desires to have a beautiful home, or, but we've been taught not to have attachments, or we've been taught, oh, you don't want to have all that. And I'd really like you to expound on that, because it's beautifully.
Yeah. When I started doing I run these events called the Deep Awakening, where I take people on a journey over a weekend, and I do that all over the world. I'm coming to America. I hope to do one in the fall. And when I started doing those, my aspiration, and it felt a big aspiration, was to introduce people to a direct experience of the deep awake state. And when I say that, I mean, what I wanted to do was give them the experience that I've had at crucial moments where you just know. You just know. And the way you know is there's just so much love. You can't miss it. It's right in your body. And incredibly, because you're right, things are accelerating. Now, pretty much, I'm tempted to say every single person, but that sounds ridiculous. But so let me just, it feels like every single person who comes gets that. And it's just, they just get it. It's just so powerful. And what I've started to see has been very interesting. I started to realize, oh, I see. Actually, introducing people to this deep awakened state is easier than I thought.
Yes.
The hard thing is persuading people they can love themselves.
Yes.
That's the hard thing. It's not waking up to this great oneness and the deep self. The hard thing is having the relationship with the personal self. And the irony is, what I found is that if I can allow myself and others to just relax into being a human being, mm-hmm. this deep spirit, this deep self, opens up of itself, and then it informs the human self, and the human self starts bringing out the best in it. So that rather than having to give ourselves a hard time, the best thing we can do is to genuinely love ourselves, and loving ourselves is the same as loving anyone else. It's actually going, look, I've got no illusions about the fact that I'm not perfect, and neither is anyone else. but neither is anyone else. That's the whole point. We're all there's a paralogical parts to us, all of us. And so that I can be here with you thinking, well, hopefully I'll come across well and we'll talk and we'll like each other. But if you actually lived with me 24/7, you would inevitably see another side of Tim, which only I see, or my wife sees, or my kids, because we're all like that. So if we can just get that we can't be evolving unless we're on a journey. And to be on a journey is to get things wrong and to not be all you could be, or even wrestle with really difficult things. So let's treat each other and ourselves with compassion because we're on that journey, not to set up some unrealizable ideal, like the Enlightenment ideal. I had that for years.
Yeah, now talk about that. Please do. I'd love to.
Well, one of the things that I think happened, certainly in my generation and the generation before, is that a lot of us looked to the East because the West didn't satisfy our spiritual needs at the time. And having kind of dismissed Western religion, just imported a whole load of Eastern religion instead, with the same like, oh, it must be true. And one of the things we imported was this idea that there were perfect human beings who were fully something enlightened. Now, so I met a lot of them now, and it turns out they're like you and me. And so I've let go of that idea, and now let go of the whole notion of there being a final state we should achieve, because I feel like it's an evolutionary journey. It just goes on, and it's uneven. And some days I feel more awake than others. And tonight I will get tired and I will go unconscious. I will go completely unconscious in the sleep state to refresh myself.
Yes.
So the idea that you can be always awake is a complete lunacy. It's crazy. And what it does...
And you also talked about, do you really want to be always awake?
Well, I certainly feel like, that all of these things we experience are valuable in the way that we're formed as souls. So one of the things that it feels like, I love music. I love music. But I don't want to only listen to happy songs. Sometimes I like to listen to sad songs, or beautiful symphonies, or things which break my heart, or jarring stuff. It's like there's a whole range of experiences. But when I take my spirituality, should I be like, oh no, I only have this one type of experience. And if I have any of the others, it's a kind of a failure. Rather than, why not make the human journey? And the waking up becomes the background. It's the thing which keeps you going, keeps you looking deeper, and let it transform you and enter into it in that spirit, rather than try and float above it as if somehow you could avoid it.
I was just thinking that perhaps one of the other things that has caused people to get maybe stuck or blocked is the spiritual traditions that have really helped us get to where we are today. Perhaps they're just still not able to keep up with the insane amount of frequencies, codes, light that's just pummeling the planet right now at such a high frequency like never before. And so why would we expect anything to be, I don't know, equivalent to what we're going through when this is such a unique time for humanity?
I think so. And I have immense respect, more than I can possibly say, for the men and women who've allowed me to be here, who opened it up, who developed the vocabularies, the techniques, all of those things. People, very amazing, wise, compassionate people have done that. But everything moves forward. And let me use the music analogy again. It fascinates me that when I listen to, say, Beethoven, I hear classical music, something it's kind of safe, and people do it in a very serious way, and it's safe music, it's old music. When Beethoven wrote that music, people didn't think it was music. People thought it was outrageous, shocking,
that's right,
challenging, like what the... And that's what time does. So when Rumi was writing his poetry, or Bodhidharma was starting up Zen, these were revolutionaries. These were people who are shocking, who were bringing something new. Now, They're kind of established, and we know who they are, and and it's all in the. So what we constantly need to do, Carl Jung said it beautifully. He said you need to keep melting down the old concepts into experience. You have to keep reinventing it. It must, otherwise it becomes a dead thing.
Yes.
And so there's respect for the past, for having passed it on to us, and now we must run with it until we pass it on to the next generation. And each one has to answer, what can I do with this wisdom I've been given to affect this new situation which we're in now on the evolutionary journey?
I loved it when you took that that experiment that they did with light, and they realized that sometimes it was wave and sometimes it was particle, and that experiment is used in so much of the spiritual teachings today. But can you talk a little bit about how you applied it with the eyes?
Yeah, I mean, it's one of the ideas again behind paralogical thinking, because I used an everyday example about the sun. You go down into physics and you find there's Niels Bohr in particular, who was the kind of founding father, I guess, of quantum physics. He discovered that you had this wave particle duality, that you look at it one way, light, and indeed everything we know now is like a one wave, and look at another way, it's all distinct particles. And he had a philosophy very much like paralogical thinking he called complementarity, which meant, again, you have to look at things from opposite perspectives. And that for me is like, there it is again, the same thing. And we need to keep, so in the spiritual world, for me, one of the great opposites is, look, I come back into the deep self and it's all one. There's one being. Mm-hmm. And then I come down into this, my separateness, and I'm Tim, and I'm meeting you, and we're separate. So which am I? Well, I'm both of those. I don't have to get rid of one. I'm actually, this is becoming conscious of this, and then this is conscious through this, and they're both true at once. We're both, and if we can see it's both, we can be authentic then, and then you and I can meet here. And I can see your face and I go, there's Alexandra, who's this unique human being. That's amazing. And she's looking at me and I'm looking at her. And then I can look deeper and I know that what I'm connecting with is conscious being looking back. And there's a place where there's one of us looking at itself. And they're both true. They're both true at the same time.
You're basically, again, you're suggesting to have the allowance to not ignore natural aspects of you as a human being.
Yeah.
That's the part I really like. I just really like that.
I'm so pleased because it seems like really important. I mean, I think one of the things the lines that might be on the back, I think, is the ego is not the enemy, it's your friend. Yes.
And that was my next question is, how did you get into, did all of this just come in? Or did you kind of have the awakening of some of these poignant pieces because of your own journey?
I think in my own journey, and it did come in, it came in through, but I've been following something for a while, and there's been key moments. I think a big moment for me in realizing how in love I was with the separateness, how much I wanted to engage with the world, was having a child. Yeah. Whilst I was single and off being thinking that I'd end up being a monk probably, or dedicating myself completely to this, because that's what first class seekers do, the really good ones. And if you failed ones, if you're not good enough for that, well, then you can have kids and family. And then I had a child who I happen to have a picture of her when she was very small on my computer screen in front of me, and when she was born, the idea then that I shouldn't be attached was nonsense. I knew as soon as she was born, I thought, that's it. I'm in trouble now, because if anything happens to this little girl, I'm really going to suffer. And you know what? I'm happy about that.
Yeah.
I'm willing to enter in. So the idea that spirituality is about avoiding suffering, like you get in Buddhism, nah. The idea that it's about non-attachment, that I shouldn't really care, I should float. No, I care.
And don't get too involved.
All of that.
It's like, at a calm, neutral level at all times.
Yeah, just like all against our humanity. Don't have, and right across, people sometimes say to me, "Oh, Tim, I have no fear anymore." And my feeling is, really? You can't be paying attention because it's scary.
And it can save your life.
How could you not be scared? How could you not be scared for yourself, for your loved ones, for the world? It's like, the question is not, so the great insight for me that really helped was when I realized I didn't have to choose. That Tim is attached, but my deeper self is not.
Yeah.
Tim fears fear and anger and this, but my deeper self doesn't. This just is with it all. It's
right.
Total acceptance. And I don't have to choose between total acceptance and being human. I have to accept the being human.
Yeah. Yeah.
And
they each have their roles. They each have their roles to play.
Yes. And the play between the two is what makes life happen.
I want to read this. You put a quote in here by Albert Einstein about immersing yourself in wonder. It says, "The most beautiful and deepest experience someone can have is the sense of the mysterious. It is the underlying principle of religion as well as all serious endeavor in art and science. He who can no longer pause to wonder and stand wrapped in awe is as good as dead and his eyes are closed." The power.
What a lovely man.
And what you did was you tied this in with, why do we need a story? So can you talk a little bit about why do we need a story?
Yeah, again, same thing. It feels like the ground for me, the place I want to start and where I have to come back to is, well, you said it when we started. I don't know what this is. I don't know. And when I really become conscious of how much I don't know, I don't know anything. It's a breathtaking mystery that we are right now. And it's very easy to fall asleep into it and think I know. But actually, I'm in a universe of 100 billion galaxies.
That, right? It could even be more.
It's just
exactly.
Unspeakable. And this solid flesh we now know is mostly emptiness. It's not there. So I don't know what this is. And having that humility and that sense of mystery is what I think that being wrapped in wonder that Einstein talks about. But then there's the story. Then there's like, okay, well, now I need to go inside and deal with my family something, and that hasn't gone anywhere. And once again, it feels like, look, it's a paralogical both and, not either or. So the choice is not give up the story. That's a bad thing, the story of Tim. Just be in the mystery. And neither is it just get caught in the story of Tim, because then I fall asleep. But to be in both, and then to find the best story, to understand it in the deepest way, and to constantly challenge it and doubt it and evolve it. So with everything we've been talking about, Alexandra, this is the key message, I think, of one of the keys of the book, which is don't look for one or the other, see what it is to have both. So the ego on itself is horrible. If you're really stuck in your separate self and you really think this is all you are, it is terrifying. You become selfish in that bad way. You're manipulative. People who are stuck in their separateness, they cause suffering all around them. But it's not a bad thing in itself. You just need to find the opposite as well. When you find the opposite as well, now you have both. The passions, they can take you by, if you get stuck in the passions, they'll tear you to pieces. But if you have this deep stillness and the passions, then you're alive. The mind, you get stuck in the mind in thinking. It literally drive you insane. But have the stillness and the mind, and then there's insight. And what we're doing now, interesting conversation, thinking. And so all of these things feel like, look, just find both. Mm-hmm. And then you have what really is, because it is both already. It always has been.
You were talking a little bit about identities, which I'd like you to get into as well. I think that's a huge issue within the spiritual community, is either having the identity of almost getting a little bit too spiritually proud, like, hey, wow, I'm so enlightened, versus just, I'm me and I'm having this experience. And if I haven't learned anything just by the myriad of interaction that I've had all over the world, is what is truth for one is maybe not for another. But it's just exactly what you're talking about, the paralogical aspect of truth, which is there's room for both.
Yeah, look, we have this, I think it's one of the things about, because spirituality has become more widespread, deep spirituality has become widespread, there's always a danger that while doing that, it becomes more superficial. And therefore we have to keep digging deeper. Mm-hmm. And I think the Enlightenment ideal we talked about is a very superficial thing. And with it becomes the idea of a kind of linear spirituality. So if you're really awake, you'd be just like, straight up. Yeah. And just, whereas actually, of course, nothing in life is like that. Everything is up and down and in and out and move. And each one of us is on a completely unique journey. So if you have a superficial idea, the feeling is, well, if I'm not happy and in my best place, I'm not as advanced as somebody who is. But that's rubbish. That's rubbish, because we go through different phases and parts of the journey. So like on a physical journey, if I had to travel from here to come and see you, there is a certain landscape I would have to negotiate, and some of that may be plain sailing and some of it may be really hard, and I may go through the dark woods, but then when I come out of the dark woods, there will be the sunny meadow. You may already be in the sunny meadow, but hey, ahead of you is the dangerous bog. There's always, and so when we meet each other, we don't need judgments about ourselves or each other. We just need compassion and understanding, because the fact that somebody, the number of people, I'm sure you do too, who have really awful things happen, and it becomes a hugely important thing for them on their journey. So we can't make those superficial judgments. We just need to be with each other in our individuality and allow that unique unfolding to take place, and support it going to the deepest place possible.
So what would you say to those individuals that are really, truly digging deeply and trying to find answers and becoming more centered and aligned with themselves and the deep awake self, as you call it? What would you say to those that feel just really beat up and spit out and targeted, really suffering dearly? I mean, really suffering, no matter how they claim, how hard they try to make changes in their life. How would you approach that? Just curious.
It's a really, really good. Well, the first thing is, my heart goes out to people who are suffering, because I know what it's like, and I know that people suffer more than I ever had, and I can only guess at what that's like. And we face such big challenges. We really do. That's why it's so important we're kind to ourselves, because life is one hell of a journey. It's utterly beautiful, and it's really hard. And that's one of the paralogical qualities it has. The thing that really helps for me is this paralogical understanding. So if I think of it's not what you're talking about, but it may help if I relate it to my own experience. If I think the last time that life was really, really tough for me was a couple of years ago, when both my parents died. My mum and my dad died, and my mum died after my dad. And seeing them my dad was lying there, he'd had a stroke for 6 months, being able to lift one arm and calling out, "Help me, help me, help me." Or my mum, who was a beautiful, beautiful sort of love being. I mean, just the most natural, unaffected. She was my teacher. She didn't know that. She wouldn't know what I was. She was she thought she was an ordinary woman.
We can tell, Tim.
Pardon?
We can tell. You did a good job.
Oh, well, I feel that now I'm delighted. So, sitting with them and then seeing, but what I saw was, look, I can be in two places at once. I can be here with my heart breaking. I can be here right in all the suffering. And there's that deep knowing we started with, that it's okay. That despite all of this, it's okay. And it's not, and because that's the deepest thing, it's not a silly belief, it's not pretense, it's not, well, the glass is half full. It's the deepest, most real experience I know. It's deeper than everything. That it can be there with me in the middle of all of the struggles. And then in my particular instance, I wanted to suffer. I wanted to suffer because it was my mum. Mm-hmm. I didn't want to be detached and not there. I wanted my heart to break. I love my mum. I love my dad. So I wanted to be there with them. And in the middle of all of that suffering, then there was magic. There were moments of just exquisite connection and magic, and wow. right in the middle of it as well. Not instead, though. It was still shit. It was still horrid. But it was also magic. And so my feeling is, whatever we're in, to find that deep place as well, not instead. If you try and find it instead, it will be impossible. It will be impossible because you probably won't be able to get there, because you won't be able to get rid of the bad thing. And it will be impossible because even if you try, you'll feel inauthentic. You'll feel like you're pretending because there's this awful thing happening. Mm-hmm. So how can I pretend that it's okay or I'm not? So don't do that. That's my advice. Rather, allow it to be exactly what it is, knowing that it's really hard, and then find the opposite as well. Mm-hmm. Find the deep stillness as well as the suffering. Find the deep love as well as the confusion. And let them both be there. And then when they're both there, it changes.
You just hit something for me as well, which is the majority of the clients for healers, practitioners, etc. I would venture to say that the majority of us see the number one cause of illness and despair is not allowing themselves to be attached to that experience. So that detachment is the immediate response to that trauma, and therefore it hasn't been allowed to express itself. It hasn't been allowed to live or breathe or even grow or get smaller or whatever. It's just like sitting in there confined within that individual, causing all kinds of ruckus. It just, when you were talking, I was like, that is exactly true. That so many of us have been conditioned to believe that if we detach from a very painful experience, then we're good to go. It's that old Victorian, come on, stiff upper lip. Fuck out, you can get through this. Don't feel too much here, okay?
Are you blaming us Brits here?
Well, my dad was English, so I so get you guys.
So look, I think you're absolutely right. When I pay attention to the deep self, one of the characteristics that I notice is that it's totally accepting of what is. It doesn't have to try. It doesn't have to be not attached. It doesn't have to change. It doesn't have to do anything. It already is. I am already accepting this moment just as it is, with all of the paradoxical, bittersweet qualities in it. Beautiful. But Tim is still Tim. And Tim shouldn't accept everything, because there's some things which are unacceptable.
Yes.
Some things are really not acceptable. But this accepts everything just as it is, because it is everything. And those two things are not mutually incompatible. So that to accept yourself as you are without changing anything is what it is to wake up. And then from that place, you can judge what's acceptable and not acceptable in yourself and do your best to change it. But do your best from a loving place. Because if you change things from a loving place, it's a lot healthier than changing things from a judgmental place.
Oh, that's that. Wow. how do I follow that? I have lists of questions, and it's like, where do I go with that? So talk a little bit about deep awake and how the ego, the mind, and awareness are all different.
Well, I'm gonna talk a little bit about stuff which isn't in the Deep Awake book. I have a new book coming out. I'm going to show it to you because I love it.
Story, right?
Also, here it is. It's arrived. I have it in my hand. It's a real thing. And this is my latest book, and I think it will be my best. And what I've done in the soul story is I've returned to looking at the nature of soul, which really I don't concentrate on in Deep Awake. Again, because there was a different message, I wanted to keep it really simple and clear. But it comes back to things which during when I was writing about Gnostic Christianity in my earlier books, which are very much about soul. And I kind of left that behind for a while and concentrated on some other things. So I'm gonna throw in some new stuff, or stuff which isn't in Deep Awake, to answer that question, Alexandra. Because what I see is that in the ancient traditions, there's a tripartite nature of identity, which in the Western tradition, in the Greek, in the original Greek, which you find in paganism and in Christianity, is soma, psyche, psyche, and pneuma, which translate as body, soul, and spirit. And these words, these words are used in lots of different ways, and people are welcome, of course, to use words in their own way, and people attach different meanings to them. So I'm not the word police. I'm not trying to tell people how they should use words. But what interests me is how these words were originally used, because sometimes you can learn a lot from that. And what I saw is that these words were being used in a really clear and very, very obvious way. So that body, soma, is what you experience with sensation. And here we are, and I'm sitting in my office looking at the computer screen. I can feel my body, I can feel my breath, I'm listening. That's my body, that's nice and obvious. And then I'm also experiencing a totally different dimension of experience right now, which is not made of matter, it's made of ideas, or it's made of mind stuff. And in that realm, which is a very clear experience, that's where all the meaning of these words is. And that's what today we call it the psyche, which is the ancient word, and it means the soul. That's the soul. Yes. That's what it is. The soul is that other dimension which is not in matter. We call it the mind, the imagination, the psyche. These are all the same word from different languages which have come together, and they all now have a different kind of quality to them, but originally they all referred to the same thing. We're having two distinct types of experience all the time. Sensation and imagination. Things which are made of matter in the world, and things which are not, which are in an utterly different dimension. Things which the lovely example is, I think, is that in the world of sensation, I'm making these funny noises with my mouth, and you are hearing them with your ears. But in soul, you're understanding their meaning. Mm-hmm. There's no meaning in the sensation. The meaning isn't in matter, the meaning is in soul. And we're connecting and communicating through sensation, but we're communicating as souls. Yes. Because we're passing meaning between us. We've been doing it for the whole conversation. We've been passing meaning between two things which are not in the world. And we've been doing it the whole time. So the experience of body and soul are absolutely obvious. And I'm going to come back to your question about the mind and the ego in a minute. But let's just do the third one since we're on a roll, if that's okay.
Of course.
And then there's the third one, which is spirit. Now, spirit really means essence, I think. And essence comes from esse, the Latin, to be, being. Then the third element is, okay, so you're experiencing sensation and you're experiencing imagination. Who's the experiencer? Who's experiencing that? And that's when you get the deepest teaching, I think, in every single mystical tradition I've studied. and I'm going to give it to you in 30 seconds if I can, which is that what you really are, your spirit, your being, has no form. Because what you are, the experiencer, is what is conscious of looking, but it has no color. It's conscious of shapes, but it has no shape.
Right.
It's conscious of listening, but it makes no noise. It's conscious of touching, but you can't touch it. It's conscious of thinking, but it's not a thought. It's before everything. And because it's not an experience apart from the experience of being, it has no form. And because it has no form, when you are conscious of being, and I am conscious of being, there's nothing to separate it. So that you come back into your spirit, and then your spirit is one with all spirit. Your being is one with all being. In the East, they say Atman is Brahman. The individual self is all self, and that's the oneness. So those three seem important. And then the one in the middle, the soul, is what makes you and I these precious individuals. The spirit is one in all of us. We are all God, or presence, or whatever, awareness, conscious of this flowing journey. But what makes you and me, is that we are on a different journey. Mm-hmm. And then it's like in that world of soul, it's as populated as the world of sensation. It's huge in there, and you do shamanic journeys and you do all that, and you just go investigate. That's huge in soul, just as it's huge in the universe. And on a very individual level, our own souls are full of different things. So mind, as we tend to use that word now, we tend to think of that to do with thinking. Mm-hmm. Well, thinking is imagination. Thinking is imagining speaking to yourself. I'm speaking to you out loud now, and now I'm going to speak to myself. That's thinking. Now, just like you and I can have a conversation like this one, and I'm really enjoying it. It's stimulating. It's made me think in new ways. I enjoyed hearing you, and hopefully you've enjoyed hearing me, and that's a great conversation. So I can have a good conversation with myself. Or we could talk rubbish, or we could shout at each other, or we could be abusive, or we could and I can do that to myself too. I can imagine giving myself a hard time. I can imagine talking nastily to myself. So the mind is neither good nor bad. Just like speech is neither good nor bad. It's what you say. And the ego is a construct. It's the idea of how I function as a separate self. What makes Tim this sort of guy? And it's changed and developed. It's my character. And in itself, again, it's neither good nor bad. I could develop a good character. I could develop a bad character. I couldn't get caught in things. So, and they're all elements that make up the soul. They're all elements that make up this other part of who we are, this deeper part of who we are.
Tim, talk a little bit about how the ego benefits us.
Sure.
I really feel like people need to hear this.
To me, it's like this is an evolutionary journey, and we wake up to oneness through separateness.
Yeah.
It's only because I'm on this individual journey. That's the whole point of this. It's not a mistake. We haven't been punished. We're evolving through it. So here's a way that I like to say it, and see if this works for you. Is people often say to me, "Oh, Tim, I want to be one with everything." And I say, to be fun, that's easy. Just go to sleep. Because in the deep sleep state, you are one with everything.
Everything.
It's just your unconscious, because consciousness is separateness. When you wake up in the morning, what you experience is self and other. This, not that. Everything is broken up. Every single thing that I'm conscious of right now, I am separating from the rest of the world. There's my computer, there's you, there's the book, there's the floor, there's the ceiling, there's the window, everything's da-da-da-da-da. To be conscious of something is to make it separate. So separateness is what allows us to be conscious, and as an individual, we've evolved into these discrete soul packages, because that's what makes us conscious. And you look around you in the world, that's what's evolved. So that the ego is part of that, part of the foundation from which we evolve, which is why when I talked about it with my little girl, which is not so little now, but she's 17 almost, but she's still my little girl.
She's still a little girl.
Yeah, always will be.
Always.
But when I see her,
So
I'm not there with her going, hey honey, don't develop an ego. Don't have a separate self. Don't put up barriers. I'm like, no, I want her to be discreet. I want her to be able to say no as well as yes. I want her to know who she is as an independent woman. So she goes into the world and she's, knows that she has all of that discreetness, because that's the foundation. So the first thing she needs is a body. She's done well with that. Now she needs a strong ego, healthy, strong sense of. If that goes well, and it seems to be going well so far, then she'll wake up to spirit from there, and then the whole thing's there. If any of those break, it will become harder. And where the ego isn't strong enough to sustain the awakening, people often need to go and work on the ego first. And my advice now would be, if you feel the tension between waking up and being pulled into your individuality, your separate self, look after the separate self first. The reason that you're not just waking up is because you need to keep working on or nurturing. Working sounds still so like, I don't know, nuts and bolts. Nurturing, creating. Create a beautiful separate self, like a work of art. Do your best. Get in there and play and be unique. Be what you are, and dare to trust that you can be what you are, and it will be beautiful. One of the things, I feel like I've talked too much, but let me just say, I want to say this one more thing to you, was that when I do this thing, Alexandra, at the Deep Awakenings that I run, I probably mention it in the book, I think I do. We've just done one last night in Glastonbury, and I call them the Deep Awake Immersion. Glastonbury. Yeah, I know. It's outrageous. I live here. I'm just down the road. I mean, I so
want to go there.
Before. I'm a Somerset boy, and what I do is I get people together. Sometimes over a retreat, but last night a lot of people, for the first time, they just walked through the door, and I just talk for a while to open them up to the depths, and then I say, let's just spend 2.5 minutes. I'll put on some beautiful music and just look in the eyes of the person who's in front of you. Hold their hands and just look in their eyes, and then after 2.5 minutes, move your seat and do the same thing again with the next person, and then 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 the next person, until you've done that with every single person in this room. And I've done that now with thousands of people all around the world, Japan and Mexico and USA. And what happens is this, you see yourself looking back, and you feel this incredible love.
Yes.
And you see that everyone is beautiful.
So true.
And at a certain point, I hope that people see, oh, every eyes I look in, I see that somebody is beautiful, even when they don't know it themselves. That's what they're seeing in me. They're looking in my eyes and going, oh, you're beautiful. And that's when we can give each other that, I see you. I see beyond all the things. Yeah, you have issues, I have issues. Anyway, we'll do our best with those.
Yeah.
But we're still beautiful, really beautiful. And we can still
the feelings.
love each other. Say again?
And the feelings. I've done that in several workshops and seminars. The immense amount of love that comes forward without saying one word and just looking into the eyes of another is just, it's like, it changes you.
It doesn't it?
Definitely in that moment. I just want people to get a flavor of you. Okay, this is like one of my favorite things that you wrote in this book.
Okay.
Okay. It says, I'm going to tell you an astonishing tale. In the beginning was the wordless. There was no one to think and nothing to think about. The primal oneness of awareness was unconscious because there was no experience to be conscious of. The oneness of awareness was the presence of light without anything to illuminate. So paradoxically, the light was dark. But it is the nature and awareness to be aware. So within the primal awareness arose a great thought, which was the universe. The timeless possibility for everything imagined, the flow of time through which everything comes into being, the oneness of being expressed is paralogical potentiality and appeared as the multiplicity of life. It goes on, but I just want people to, I've got goosebumps. It's like, and even though this is so profound, his writing style is very simple too. It's getting down to brass tacks. I love that. You know, it's like, okay, we've been presented with this. We've been told that, you know, if you do this, then you're like a guru, or you're really enlightened, or you're really on this fast track to spiritual growth. But let's look at it the other way. Let's see what this is not doing for you, you know? But
one of the things that I love the most is because of this, exactly what you're talking about. When I spend time with people at retreats and do all that stuff, is that it's very quickly people relax into being themselves, and there's a real authenticity with that, and it lets me be me. So that rather, it looks very lonely to be a spiritual teacher up on a stage with a funny name and everyone thinking you're perfect, and then you know you're not. And all of that kind of awful contradiction, and then the more you've said you are, the more you have to carry on pretending you are, until they find out, and then they find you've slept with
so true.
Acolytes, and oh God, on it goes. And it just feels like, no, it's so, what's so sweet is that I want to meet people as we are, which means I can be Tim, you can be Alexandra, and I can look in your eyes, and I can also see God looking back at me.
Yes.
And I can see both of those. And I have no illusions that, you know, about myself, but also that's okay, because I'm doing my best. Or I'm probably more accurately, I'm doing my best to do my best. You know, on a good day, I do my best, but I do my best to do my best. And there's a kind of a great patience in that, which has been hard won, and I'm very grateful that it's coming.
That's awesome. Well, you've brought up God many times, and you had a very profound way of seeing God. Can you talk a little bit about that?
To me, God is, well, I actually, it's moved on a big way with the new book, actually, but God is a word I avoided quite a bit at certain points, and then I've written about it a lot at other points. It's a difficult word because people have means so many different things to people. For me, I'm referring to the oneness from which everything is coming, and also the oneness to which everything is going. It feels like we need to understand God in a way as the omega and the alpha and the omega. It's moving from a state of unconscious oneness through this experience of manifesting itself as you and me and everything that is, to a state of conscious oneness. And that's what the evolutionary process is. That's what, and that conscious oneness is rising through us. When a soul awakens and touches spirit, then it becomes conscious of that oneness. And then God as conscious oneness, as love, comes into being. So it's coming from what the Tibetans call the luminous potentiality, the emptiness of potentiality. I love the luminous potentiality particularly. It's like this idea that, and then it's becoming everything that is. It's the formless. It's our spirit. It's there right now. It's formless, and it's becoming every form. And then through us, it is coming to know itself. And then through knowing itself, it's coming into being as this conscious oneness, which is love. And I sit here, and ever since I've been a child, I've been aware of that being of love supporting me and calling me towards it, which is, doesn't matter what name you give it. You know, the names get in the way, really, but it's there.
Yeah, totally. Now you have coined yourself as many different things. You know, I love this deep life explorer and spiritual pioneer, and excuse me, my phone's ringing, and stand-up philosopher. You mentioned that you've done it all. You've kind of like gone down every possible spiritual path known to And one of the things you mentioned was experimentation with psychedelic drugs. Curious, what did you learn in your journey from meditation versus psychedelic drug experimentation?
Great question. Great question. In one way, the first thing I want to say is I learned the same thing, because what marked out both experiences was they both took me to the deep awake state. And when I was younger, my experience was, I'm awake, I'm asleep. I've lost it, I've lost it, I've lost it. I found it, I've lost it, I've lost it, I've lost it. And that was how it was. And so whether through meditation or through psychedelics, that was the moment, oh, I see it, it's all one and it's love and everything's all right, thank God for that. Oh God, and I've lost it again. And so it did that. But the quality is different. There's the thing which, psychedelics are really a human-made version of shamanic power plants. And human beings have been using these things for it's probably the beginning of spirituality. It's probably the very first thing I suspect that we ever did was pick up a mushroom, eat it, and go, oh my God. And what it does, I think, is it throws you into deep soul. You suddenly go, what it did for me was it made me disappear off into a land of visions, mm-hmm. and realize that this thing of my soul, my psyche, was huge, and that I'd only glimpsed a small, safe little corner of it, and there was things out there which were beautiful and scary and awesome and transformative. And then also, because of the nature of visions, that it was here with me and it would superimpose on this world. Whereas meditation could do that too, in a different way. But meditation I've always found particularly good at finding the deep stillness. Mm. It's the thing which allows me to reach back behind all of it to spirit. And there's this deep, profound, all-encompassing peace. And that would be what I would turn to meditation for.
Do you feel that even meditation is something that we're redefining?
Yes.
You know what I mean? I hear people say, well, I got to go meditate for 3 hours or whatever it is. And I'm thinking, 3 hours? I want to just be connected and get in that space in minutes.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know that I've meditated for 3 hours since I've had kids, but before that I did. I mean, I had 2 whole years where I pretty much did nothing but meditate, and I had a real obsession with it, and that was great actually at the time. I wouldn't do that now. To me, I don't even call it meditation. I mean, I do in my book sometimes, and I will talk about it for ease, but I don't to myself. I just go and sit still.
Well, I wanted to bring that up because I feel as if I hear this from people too. They don't think they're doing it correctly.
Yeah, to me, all of these spiritual techniques to me are experiments. What happens if we do that? What happens if we do that? And when I do stuff with people, the very first thing for me is like, you can't get this wrong because it's an experiment. I'm just giving you a tool with which you can explore yourself and your life and try it out and see what you find. And what you find is just as valid as what someone else finds.
Yes.
Because that's what you found with it. So use it as a tool. So what we're doing with meditation to me is we're going, look, I spend a lot of my time putting my attention out into the world. Mm-hmm. And that's great. What happens if I have some time where I take my attention? First of all, I still down my sensation by concentrating on something like my breath. So all of that experience of sensation just quiets down. And now I've just got breath. And then I take my attention and I go inside and I let my soul or my mind also quiet down. And then I sink my attention right back onto the witness of this moment. What's experiencing this? What happens if I do that? And what happens is you become conscious of your deep being. And suddenly there's this oceanic bliss, this beautiful, huge presence. So that for me, meditation is more like, oh God, I hope I can find some time to do that because it's really nice. Where it used to be, I should do that because it's good for me. Right. Yeah, and I failed again. Oh, that's typical. Oh, it's my ego persuading me not to do it. If only this ego wouldn't persuade me that I want to watch the TV. Whereas now it feels to me, Tim, if you feel like you're so exhausted, you just want to sit in front of the TV for an hour, sit in front of the TV. Just relax. And then probably when you've had enough, it'll go, do you know what? I think I fancy going up and meditating now. Or
yes,
let's just sink into that deep place. Or it may arise just of itself.
yes.
So my feeling with the difficulty with certainly giving other people advice is I think we're all in different places, like I said. So there's some people who really get called to go for meditation. My feeling is, great. If you feel it, do it. Right. But don't give yourself a hard time if you don't feel that.
Or someone else.
Yeah, or somebody else.
Yeah. And what I have suggested to people is if they are really interested in writing, people can literally reach that state of euphoria in doing things such as that, such as dancing and painting. And
the reason I stopped, I came out of my second period of quite intense meditation. The reason it ended, Alexandra, was because I realized that listening to the music of Van Morrison was taking me into a deeper state of meditation. This was in the 80s.
I love it.
So I thought, this is crazy.
For me, it's Led Zeppelin, okay?
Okay. So it just felt like, right, okay, I think I need to go and do something different now.
Seriously. So what I love about your message too is it's like, don't be so hard on yourself.
Yeah.
And I've also had talk about, we're talking about attachment versus non-attachment. I kind of got to a place where I lived for so long without what I had thought that I wanted to reach within my own goals and dreams, okay, which is a while back. It's not where I am now, but I really wanted to have that experience. And I hear people say to me all the time, I'm giving everything I have away. I'm packing up everything in my closet. I'm just going to pare down and everything else. And I said, well, why are you doing that? I'm just curious. Why are you doing that? Well, I just feel like, I got to get rid of stuff. And I said, okay, well, if that's, if you're legitimately really wanting to do that, cool, all power to you. What is your feeling about stuff? Houses, beautiful cars. There is an aspect of being in this physical reality. It's just like everything else you're talking about, where we came here to experience. And that can.
How do I feel about stuff? That is such a great question, Alexandra. I remember, it just came into my mind, this memory, which seems relevant, was when I was 24, I ran away for the second time to a friary and almost became a friar. And I literally just went. And I'd been at university, I'd left my flat and everything was in it, and I just went to this friary. And I'd run away there when I was 15, and I ran away again then when I was 24.
That's amazing.
And I can remember this experience I had in meditation, or prayer, as I probably would have called it then, and sitting in the chapel. And it was almost like, it was like I had a vision of everything which was in my little bedsit, all my things. And they were coming up to me going, you're going to have to come back, because we're your things. You've got to come back, because we're your things. Like, oh, tell me. And it was a very strange thing. I thought, oh, what is this relationship between me and my things? So I think we can get caught up in them, because we can walk away from them. And it's kind of nice to know you can.
Yes.
But as well, I love beautiful things. I can just see in the corner of this picture, there's a guitar at the back there, which I was given when I was 18 by my parents. And it's a beautiful thing. And I've carried it around with me since I was 18, because it's a beautiful thing. My wife gave me this lovely jacket. I love it. It's a nice thing. Yeah. I think beautiful things are great. The problem, I think, comes when it's like when we lose the opposite. So beautiful things are beautiful things. But if we become just obsessed by beautiful things, or things we want, or avarice, or I want the best, or what, then we lose sight of something else, which is this incredible generosity which arises from love. This incredible desire to reach out and to give ourselves away, which comes from love. And somehow the wisdom, what I call love wisdom, like it's one thing, the wisdom is how do you live with that paradox? My friend Peter, who I wrote a lot of books on my bestseller, The Jesus Mysteries with, his dad has just died. And he was a priest in the Church of England, lovely man. And I remember he said once, and you kind of nailed the problem in Christianity in a way. He just went, look, he said, Jesus says you've got to give all your stuff away to the poor, but if I gave all my things away to the poor, I'd just be one of the poor.
That's cute.
And it's like, oh yeah. And there you've got the paralogical problem. So there's this love which goes, I want to give myself away. And then there's, oh, but I need to look after myself and my family and and maintaining that, my life.
Yeah.
And somehow we need the wisdom. And there's no rule for this, I don't think. It's like in this moment, we have to decide where we put our attention in that great dance between what we give and what we need. And they're both necessary, and we need to have both. Does that make any sense?
Yeah, no, that's beautiful. So how about when you run into people that are really lacking love for themselves? How do you assist them in finding that again?
Well, it happens a lot, I guess, now. At the Deep Awakening events that I do, we get all sorts of people, which is what I love. All sorts. Because I'm a philosopher, we get a lot of people who are into thoughts. Because I'm really a love junkie, we get a lot of people who are into feelings. We get body people, and we get young and old, and we get people who've been really experienced on this for decades, and then people who've just woken up, and then we get people who are brought along by their husband or wife and don't even know what's going on. and every single one of them makes the journey. And I think the biggest one is that journey of to love yourself. So my feeling is we can give it to each other by being it ourselves. The biggest thing I can offer is to be okay with me and to be okay with you. And if I can be okay with me and be okay with you and in touch with this big space, then you have the opportunity to do that as well. And my experience is people are much more ready to take the opportunity than sometimes we think if we really open up that totally accepting, safe space. It's safety. The great thing about retreat spaces is you can make them really safe. I have this line which I really like. Every heart assured of safety opens instantly. And that's what I see. Every heart assured of safety opens instantly.
Ooh, that's beautiful. Well, and I was going to add that with a lot of the work, when you go into looking at all the other aspects of you, maybe going into some deep past life journeys and regression and things like that, what you'll ultimately realize is if you're feeling unworthy, or you're feeling a lack of love for yourself, or you're feeling, disgusted, or just generally not feeling great about who you are, what you'll generally find, and it's pretty much across the table no matter who we're talking about, is that it was one teeny tiny small choice that you made a long, long time ago in a different journey or in a simultaneous timeline that is causing that feeling now, because it's grown into something so gigantic.
Yeah, and it causes fractures, I think, don't you?
Right.
That the soul is made up of everything we've ever been.
Yes.
It's made up of everything we've ever experienced. And sometimes, or a lot of the time, it fractures into parts, and then the parts argue. So that a lot of what we do is we identify with one part of ourselves and attack the other part. And often, my experience, certainly when I was younger, a lot, was I just flipped between the parts. So I had a kind of wild, artistic, hedonistic side, and I had a mystical friar, mystical guy who wanted to just leave the world and give himself to God. And they would argue, but I would be both of them. I'd step into one and be like, oh, this wild person has got to go. And then that would last for a while, and then it would flip.
Yeah.
And then suddenly I'd be the wild person going, oh God, it's just so uptight, that guy.
Yeah.
Let's really enjoy life. And they were both just fragments of myself, and I was both and neither of them.
Yeah.
So that one of the great things about the deep self is that if you can identify with the deep self, you're not stuck in any fragment. And then from that place, you can allow the fragments to get to know each other. And now they get on okay. And they realize that they both need they'll both have there's days when I need to be one and days when I'll be the other. And sometimes a bit of both. Mostly.
We're a myriad of different,
aren't we?
Tims and Alexandras.
Yeah.
I mean, we have a different essence for every part of our life and every action we take. Everything that we do. We're
part of that, I think,
two or three. We're a ton.
So one of the spiritual mistakes, the thing that you've been drawing out a lot in this conversation, which has been fantastic, is that some of the spiritual mistake can be to think that there is a fragment of you that's the real you. But there isn't a fragment of you. There's a fragment of you which is always like this, or talks slowly, or,
has it all together.
Wise, always loving, very calm, whatever it is, with your fantasy. That fragment is the real you. No, it's all you.
Yeah.
The whole soul is you, and the thing which is the deepest part of you is actually beyond all of it, and is this all-embracing spirit, is being, it's the oneness. So that you don't have to prejudice that spiritual character, which is why I love, certainly my retreats, is that very quickly no one tries to. When I was young, I go to spiritual retreats, most people walking around trying desperately to embody that part of themselves and hold it together long enough until they went home so that no one saw the cracks. And that doesn't happen anymore. Now people can just be themselves. And we're all...
We've really come a long way as far as being a lot more allowing in having those cracks, not being perfect, not striving for perfection, which I think was very heavy in the 1950s. We kind of have a 1950s hangover of this drive and ambition to be this perfect mother, perfect father, perfect provider, perfect college student, perfect everything. When you do touch upon this, where
I suspect it's still out there. I mean, I think as you get older, it helps. There's a wisdom which can come with age where you don't take yourself so seriously and you let those things go. It worries me that it's still strong for young people, and that it's even in some ways it's even stronger out there because we're living in such a global world now. We're all getting to see these idealized images from all over. So it's very important, I think, that the older people step up there and go, oh no, don't get caught in that. We did that. Don't do that. Just keep seeing something bigger, something more. To me, it's like, let's just do that. Let's just keep reminding ourselves and our kids and everything that what we're in is huge and beautiful and important and mysterious. Because that's the thing which is, if we hold on to that, we'll keep evolving. We'll be okay.
And you hit it before, is see the wisdom in everything that comes across your desk, that comes into your life, that comes into your field, where you're not getting too attached to either or the polarity of I should be this or that. You're basically, your whole premise is all about being okay with being this and that. Instead of the or, it's the and.
Yeah.
It's so beautiful. I have another little favorite spot here. Can I read it? Do you want?
I'm delighted.
It's talking about the separate individual. And it says, first, we need a robust sense of being a separate individual. And when this is strong enough, it can support a conscious awakening to our deeper being. And when a strong separate self is absent, the natural process of awakening is transformed into the pathology of depersonalization. Many ancient spiritual traditions understand this, which is why they reverse the deep teachings of oneness for those who had reached a mature age, and possessed a robust individual ego. Can you talk a little bit about that? Because I thought there's like all kinds of pearls of wisdom in that paragraph.
The same thing I was saying earlier, really, and large upon that, which is that when I talk about my daughter or any of us, you need to come into the world, you build the physical foundation, you then build the soul foundation, then you can wake up to oneness. And in a lot of the ancient traditions, they wouldn't open up the deep teachings of oneness until you were in your 40s or even in your 50s. Which for them was very late because a lot of the people died young. So in the Kabbalah you'd find that, in the pagan mysteries you would find that in some teachings. So you have this idea of a progression through life. So your first job is to establish yourself in the world, and then when you're in the world you can rise above it. One of the problems I think I faced in my life was I woke up when I was 12 for the first time, and then was in and out, and I came into a culture in which it was very natural for me to reject the world, not as kind of crazy, which it is. So it was like, oh, I don't want anything to do with that, and it was great for me, but it meant I never really had a relationship with it until I was much older. I had to actually choose to engage with it because I was floating somewhere above it, wasn't actually in it. Whereas a lot of my mentors, people who inspired me, woke up when they were 40. Yeah. And they were already a professor of psychology, or they were in the world, and then they woke up. So I did it the wrong way around in a way. So that's the idea. But what it points to for all of us, because it doesn't matter which happens for you, what it points to is that waking up is healthy when you're ready. One of the things which happened to me when I was writing the book is that a young person who's very close to me started having this experience, very common, of depersonalization or derealization, which is having these deep mystical experiences without a solid ego. And it's a form of very distressing mental illness. Because what he was experiencing was, there's me going, oh, it's like it's all a dream. And he's going, it's like it's a dream, it's not real. And it's terrifying. Or I don't really exist as a person. And there's me going, you come into the oneness, it's like you don't really exist as a and what is a positive thing in a both and becomes a negative thing if you lose the robust self. So that's why when I see that happening, and I root everyone solidly in the separate self. First and foremost, go to your separate self. So when I was younger, I used to have these big awakenings, and then they go, and I'd feel like, oh, I was frightened of it. My ego pulled me back. Now it feels like, oh no, that was my wisdom. Mm-hmm. My wisdom said, no, Tim, you're going to dissolve if you do that. And you've only just arrived. You don't want to dissolve yet. You want to be Tim for a bit.
Or you needed to process it.
Exactly, yeah. You needed to come back in, and there's that feeling, if I'd just gone deeper into it, it would have actually been disastrous. Yeah. But just in my thinking, it felt like, oh no, I should have gone deeper and it's my failure. Where it felt like, no, I went in and then I had to come back and build it into my separate self. And that was a much wiser thing to do.
I am so glad you brought that up about the robust ego, okay, the robust ego self, because I do see a lot of people that dabble in the experimentation of psychedelic drugs, or ayahuasca is like this huge thing. Yeah. People are going down to South America, they're getting their private guides and all the stuff. But what I'm finding is in some of the healing work that I'm seeing, very common thread that if you're not ready and you do not have that solid ego, it is going to mess you up.
Yeah, I see that as well. And it's difficult for me because, I'm a dad now and I can see my kid, and it's like I want them to know, this is, my experience was amazing actually, but I wasn't too young and I had a robust ego. I had a robust sense of myself and it sustained me. So what I experienced was this, Tim, and then this as well. Yeah. But if you haven't got that, then it can be absolutely disastrous because you're being catapulted into this other world that you're not ready. And it's not like, I don't mean that in a sense of you're not ready. I mean, like you need to do other work or you need to evolve here more first. And then you'll really
maybe what you're saying is perhaps there are some sequence of events.
You certainly need to be strong enough. It's like, you wouldn't go mountaineering if your body wasn't strong enough.
Yes.
Well, taking psychedelics, taking ayahuasca is like mountaineering for the soul. You need to be ready for that.
Yes.
And if you are, it could be an amazing experience. If you're not, you're going to end up the mountain going, what the hell have I done? You know, you need to be appropriate to yourself and where you're at, and to know, and not assume that because other people are telling you that it's right. You need to know for yourself and your own self.
So what would you say to someone who says, you know what, I don't really want to have this big, deep conversation because I run my life just by being with my intuition?
I don't think it's good enough. Myself, it feels like, again, it's a paralogical thing. For me, it's like we have two aspects of the way that we deal with these things. One is the rational mind and one is the intuition, and we need each other. You know, the rational mind can process things, but without the intuition, everything I do comes from the intuition.
Yeah.
But I put it through the rational mind because what comes to us, I have learned. You know, my intuitions have been wrong. You know, I was involved in a cult when I was young, in which I thought my guru was God incarnate, and that was obvious.
Wow. Did you really?
Yeah, for a short while. And I look back now and I think, you know, it was a great experience, but that wasn't true.
Right.
And so once you've done that enough, you know, certainly as you get older, I think one needs the clarity to know, look, I can be wrong a lot. And just because I really feel it doesn't mean it's really true. And just because I think this is going to work out doesn't mean it will. And just because there's a synchronicity doesn't mean I've got a magical calling to go that way. We have to, you know, it could do.
Yeah.
But my experience is sometimes it doesn't.
Right.
Sometimes it does. And that I need both faculties, because what happens is because we can get caught in reasoning, and it goes round and round and round in circles, that becomes a bogeyman. But it's not a bogeyman. The ability to doubt and to think and to reason without it, we'd be nowhere. Exactly. But it mustn't replace the intuition. The two must work like that. They pass between them. And if we have both, it feels a lot better than just having one. And one without the other. Having rationality without intuition is disastrous, but so is thinking that intuition is going to run the whole thing. I know so many people who set out on that journey thinking that they're making a bold step, and you know, they spend all their money on some mad project that they believe is going to just happen because they believe it enough. Yes. And wake up with nothing at the end of the day thinking what the hell happened, and then give up on everything because they feel disappointed and let down that their naive confidence didn't work out.
Yes. Familiar with that story. Definitely familiar with that story. Well, tell me, before I let you go, I'd love to hear, how do you see yourself playing within the time game?
How do I see myself playing in the time game? Okay, so here's the major theme of my new book, Soul Story. Well, where it starts is about the nature of time.
Cool.
Because people sometimes say that time's an illusion, but actually what I'm experiencing right now, the most obvious thing is that all of my experience is a flow of time. Everything I'm experiencing is what I call the time stream. It's just time is happening. That's what's happening. And what's become apparent as I've meditated on that to me is that I have this metaphor in our culture, which is that time passes. But it seems to me that a much better metaphor is that actually time accumulates. And there's more time now than there was when we started this conversation. There's more past now than there was. And that everything which has ever been is implicit in this moment. Our first connection, our emails, our conversation, what you said, your question, everything, the evolution of the human body, my personal journey as a soul, your personal journey as a soul, the evolution of the solar system, the Big Bang, everything is implicit in this moment. So right now, everything I have ever been is meeting everything you have ever been.
Mm-hmm.
That's what we are. That the universe is made of time. That we are made of time. We are we're not little slices in the now, because we're processes in time. Like this sentence is a process, in everything is in time. So that it feels to me that the universe is time, is the moment. So this moment here is the meeting of the past, everything that has been, and the possible, everything that could be. And the now is those two sitting together right now.
Beautiful.
So that it's completely new. Every moment is new. Everything's a new possibility. And yet it must contain everything that has been in it. So for me, how do I see myself in time? I see myself as time. And that through this process of that I call a life, my soul, which is everything I've ever been and everything I've experienced, is coming into form. The formless is coming into form as this unique being currently called Tim, meeting this unique being who's also coming into form, called Alexandra. That these two, the formless is arising as this journey in time in which we are becoming distinct individuals in every second, because we're now more formed than we were a second ago, and more formed again, and more formed again, because everything we experience becomes what we are.
Wow. That's awesome. Well, I just want to thank you. I can't wait to read your soul story book, and just again to remind everybody, feel free to they can get the books on Amazon.
They can get the books on Amazon. If they want a signed copy, they can get one from my website. It's more expensive because I'm in England, but they can get one. We have copies of Soul Story 2, although it's not really out until April the 21st. And there's loads of free stuff on my website. I try and do as much as I can. Nearly most of what I do is for free. And if you go to my website, there's loads of videos and audio books you can just have for free, and all sorts there. And if you sign up for the
meditations, he's got
meditations
all
for free.
Meditations up there, guys. Check it out.
Yeah.
So again,
and
it's
sign up,
free.
put yourself on the newsletter, and you can hear when new stuff goes out. Things like I'm doing with yourself, and so it's all there. You know, if you're touched by it, then and you can contact me. We're launching a forum very soon, a couple of weeks. New website, new forum, because I want to reach out and talk to people. You know, and so that it's possible to have a conversation as well.
Well, I think we're going to have you back on next month, right?
Do we have a date? I can't remember. It'll be in my diary.
I don't know. I think something was scheduled for me.
I hope so.
But yeah, I would love to. Maybe I can come up with some deeper questions next time.
Oh, these were fantastic questions. Fantastic. And if we move on to Soul Story, it'll be a whole different thing. No, I'm so delighted to be able to focus in on what I feel is this thing which you have brought out, because you know it feels like that's where we should end. Really, is that this waking up is to love.
Yes.
That's what it is. That's what I know. The first time it happened to me when I was 12 years old, there was this love. And the place that love needs to go is also to oneself.
Yes. Yes. Well, and I say it all the time. Well, thank you, Tim. I really treasure this interview. This is very, very dear to my heart. And I just want everyone out there to know that you already know how much I love you. I tell you this every time I'm interviewing. I think about all of you all the time, even if I'm not sitting at the desk or in the car or at a job, wherever you are. I literally am connected to all of you. And I'm honored to be able to be here to serve you and bring these types of things forward to assist in any way that it can help and assist you through these amazingly accelerated growth phases that we're going through. So I can't say more to check this man out, because he's just really got it going for my very enlightened audience. So again, it's Tim Freke, and it's FREKE.com. And as always, continue to check out our blog. It's 365 days a year. We do everything we can to provide you information that's unifying the ufology, spirituality, and conspiracy communities through the galactic lens, and providing you the information that we feel you need to learn discernment and really see what is going well on the planet, instead of being so deluged by a lot of the misery. You'll be able to see what's going on, but you'll also be able to see the goodness that comes out of it. So anyway, please continue to support us. We do a lot of stuff for free, a lot like Tim, and we do have a ton of healing services, as well as all of my violet ray alchemy. I am finally just about, can you believe it? I've only been talking about this for months. I'm just about to release my Removing the Veils all-chemical box. It's a package specially designed for working with clients, as well as taking it personally by mouth, orally, or even on the body. So if you have any other questions, drop me an email, and you know where to find us. It's galacticconnection.com. Take care and have a wonderful rest of your week. Thanks, Tim.